It is Sunday Night Roundtable, despite the fact that we just played a promo for a fantasy football podcast, but that's okay. It's not a problem. Our intro music is a little wild. I felt like I was in a Gatorade commercial, like one where people get thrown in the fucking stands. I don't care. The Titans.
That felt like a promo where Cam Newton loses his job.
Yeah, that was... That absolutely felt like one of those promos. Welcome in Sunday Night Roundtable, brought to you by Broadway Sports Media. I am happy to be back with you for a second season. Appreciate the guys picking up my damn slack last week when I wasn't able to attend.
Hey, we're here for you, Lebowski.
We're here. We've got Taylor. We got Ryan. We've got, who are you? Boren?
I'm just a guy.
The
I'm
CEO.
just a guy. J-A-G, Jag, just a guy.
Just a guy.
Jag.
The Titans just pulled off what I thought was absolutely impossible based on the way the first quarter went. 33-30 overtime win. This game was 24-9 at half, and it was all over the place. We got multiple topics we want to get to. Let me start by the fact that Fat Randy did it when Fat Randy needed to do it, and the Titans got a win.
I mean, that's all that matters, right? Fat Randy got out there and made a kick. I mean, sure, he missed a 44-yarder earlier in the game and whatever, but he made it when it counted, so he gets a job a second week, I guess, right?
Literally, the second I start broadcasting, a mosquito is flying around my face. It's not helping. It's not helping things.
That's good.
Taylor, had you given up at any point? And you can be honest, because I just tweeted out that I never gave up, even though I did publicly.
Honestly, no. Because after the halftime, they only scored 6 points. Was it the one touchdown and they missed the extra point?
Yeah. Almost Seattle. Yes,
yeah.
They had 6 points in the fourth quarter.
I never give up before halftime, because anything that happened in the first half can happen in the second half. It can always flip-flop. It just depends on how they prepare for the second half.
Yeah, I told at halftime we had some people. I was saying this game is not over, even though it's 24-9, and I was beat up in the chat a little bit. Sim Biscuit, I don't see you in here yet, but by him particularly saying that it's over, don't believe whatever. But I was saying that the Titans get the ball first. If they can make some things happen, if they can turn this around, it'll be here in the second half. And they did that. Hold the defense, like Taylor's point there, holding them to 6 points in the second half really helps, obviously. But it's just a big turnaround. And honestly, I get where people were not believing or down in the dumps about, especially the way that was the worst probably defended drive you've ever seen in your life as a Titans fan leading into halftime from the Seattle Seahawks. So, I mean, I get where the emotions were coming from, but sometimes that's why you have to separate the emotions of, oh, the route is on, or, oh, this is terrible, or, oh, in the world. But you have to be able to have faith. This is NFL. Things can fly either way and change in a heartbeat, especially when you have possession and your defense can snap back and prove they can stop the Seahawks like they did a couple times in the first half, did that all second half. So there's no reason to give up the thought that the Titans can come back in this game.
Look, football is a game of matchups. It's a game of ebbs and flows. And the fact that the Titans had the ball in the second half is absolutely a major impact in this game. You talk about the ability to come out there in the second half to come back and actually get some points there. When the team had the, how do I put it? The drive that made me go on a preaching tour. I became a religious preaching guy.
Soapbox. You're on your soapbox.
At halftime, at the end of that first half, because of the way that team played the end of that first half, with the way that they were able to drive down and get points, not just points, but a touchdown, the ability to come back here and respond. And frankly, the defense, while they gave up plays, the defense is absolutely a winner coming out today. There were coaching decisions, but from a player's perspective, the defense, I don't see how you could have issues with the way the players played today.
Let me drop this delicious little stat courtesy of John Glennon. Per NFL on CBS, the Seahawks were 52-0 when leading by 15 or more points at home. They are now 52-1.
I'm sorry.
Had to stop sometime.
Could you restate that?
Yeah, 52-0. Seahawks were 52-0 when leading by 15 points at home. They're now 52-1 after the Titans rallied down from 24-9. So starting with that rally, we're going to go through what worked and what didn't, because there are obviously a lot of issues. But one of the things that we wanted to see coming out of last week was, would the Titans be able to pick themselves back up off the mat and be able to get a win? Now, I think to a lot of fans, that meant, were they going to start with getting their ass up off the mat in the first quarter, not waiting until coming out of the locker room? But this is one of the, I guess what I'm so pleased to see is that despite everything that we saw go wrong for the Titans today, including shit that they couldn't control, officiating was particularly terrible. The Titans did not give up, and they still found ways to get it done. So let's start with the bad first, so that we can end on the good notes. To start with, one of the things that Boren brought up before we went live, situational awareness. And when I asked you, Boren, situational awareness where?
I will fight you right now. Situational awareness, 100%. That's the big thing that when you come to any sort of game, that's the thing that wins or lose games. When it comes to situational awareness, the ability to come up when it's 3rd and 10, cool. If you give up the 8-yard catch, but you tackle them before the sticks, that's fine. And when you look at the Titans, up until that final drive, they did not show those kinds of things. When you talk about Mike Vrabel not challenging when it comes to the play that we'll say arguably, I actually don't think it was arguable. The fact that he did not challenge that play, in most plays where they are not going to challenging plays is very much you're flipping a coin, right? You don't know which way it's going to go. On that one, the fact that they did not challenge the play at the end of the second half, that one did not make sense to me. And so when you talk about situational awareness, you have to take the wins wherever the plays are coming to you, and they did not do that in that situation.
So, Taylor, let me ask, one of the major problems, obviously, the team had today was the O-line. And into that, one of the things that impressed me was that Tannehill was able to keep his composure for the entire game, despite being put on his ass, despite, getting, having another fumble attributed to him. That really, to me, is what has been separating Tannehill from his time in Miami to him coming to Tennessee, is that the Titans are now getting to see a quarterback that holds his composure, despite the fact that he's got people rolling around at his feet a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of good runs today, a couple of good runs at least. Just like he said, the situational awareness and just taking advantage of those opportunities, with the runs. And even though we had Roger Saffold and Taylor Lewan out for most of the game, I think the O-line definitely played better than they played last week. I'll say that. Even though we were missing 2 of our starters, they looked a lot better.
I said at halftime, tackles were not the problem. That's very much the case. Tackles were not the problem. The interior has some characteristic things. With you factor in Nate Davis missing some. So Nate Davis has become one of the best guards in his position. What he does, being able to recognize second level things, pass pro, he's done a really good job. These first 2 games, he hasn't. Saffold also has been uncharacteristically bad in some spots, and those are glaring. And that's the thing about offensive line. You can say, well, yeah, if we had 95% of the game, we were good. But yeah, but if 5%, you just totally drop the ball on things. Those are the things that people remember. And this offensive line, for the most part, in that first half was terrible. Now, as evidence of Derrick Henry being able to break some things, now we'll mention this. Some of his long runs he was able to break, he broke outside away from the blocking. So I don't want to say the offensive line was bad in those situations, but at the same time, they definitely rebounded a little bit to give him the chance to get to that edge where that wasn't there in the first half when they were breaking through and having the penetration that you weren't used to seeing last year for the Titans offensive line. So yes, it wasn't your typical offensive line you're used to seeing from last year. What was one of the strengths of the Titans, even when people went down. But the tackles being the second string guys weren't bad today. It was some other things, but they got it figured out in the second half. Derrick Henry finishes with 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. He definitely had a monster day just in that second half alone.
Let me go to the chat real quick. First of all, because the name is amazing, because comes courtesy of Fish Spit.
From YouTube.
Thank you, Fish Spit, for
Hi, Fish.
existing. Absolutely love that name. Fulton shut down DK. He shut him down, and he got under DK's skin, which I really like to see, because DK has, in the last couple of years, you've noticed it a lot, that he gets thin-skinned, and he loses his temper. And Fulton did a good job not just shutting him down, but getting under the helmet of DK. I love that. Really thought he played two roles so well, the villain and shutting him down. It was beautiful to see.
So as the defensive backs guy here, there's definitely an element when it comes to the mental game, right? And DK has proved to be Ryan will appreciate this word, a mercurial wide receiver. And when you talk about that, that's a guy that you go in there and you do play the mental game on him. You're going to go in there on those plays, because there's going to be 90% of the plays are not going to come that direction. And the fact that he was engaging with him, he's going to be a physical player. He's going to be an aggressive player. DK is a guy that wants to come out there and be AJ Brown did not perform to his what you expect him to perform to there. DK also did not, but both of them live up to their, I got the muscles. Everybody remembers the picture that they're throwing up there, the shirtless pictures. And when DK is out there, that's the guy that wants to just muscle over everybody that is in front of him. And Christian Fulton straight up came out there and performed right there with him. So when it comes to that, DK is not a guy that wants to have to just try and man up and deal with kind of aspects. So credit to Christian Fulton to come out there, shut him down. And frankly, there's nothing that DK Metcalf did today that impacted the game whatsoever, which is 100% an impact of Christian Fulton.
6 catches for 53 yards from DK, but it was a quiet 53 yards. I mean, I know 53 isn't great, but I mean, he had 6 catches and 53 yards. You expect more from DK with the stats he's put in the past. And these first 2 games, Christian Fulton, that's what's giving me hope for the secondaries. When you have a guy like that who was a draft pick last year, who had some struggle to get on the field, but didn't produce, but he's able to come in like this and produce in these first 2 games and stop some receivers. I know it was AJ Green, as Mike Herndon says, the former ghost of AJ Green and all that good stuff. But at the same time, AJ, Christian Fulton was able to have an impact there and eliminate a receiver. So in the past with the Titans, you're worried about, well, if we can eliminate one receiver, but then the number 2 would always go off, or a tight end would go off. Now you're looking at a chance where you can just have to maybe worry about, you've got one side, Christian Fulton's going to take away that number 2. Now, Jackrabbit, I know that Lockett had the big day, but there was some blown coverages on some of those plays. So these stats, I mean, Lockett 8 receptions, 178 yards, big day, but a lot of those were blown coverages and blown things for, Molden needs to improve, those kinds of things. But having Fulton there as a piece in that secondary has got to be comforting to some level for the Titans and for fans to know that they have someone out there that can do this performance back-to-back games. It's not just a one-off fluke.
Let's flip to DK's Ole Miss teammate component, AJ Brown. Didn't have a great game. I mean, he had 4 drops that I saw. I don't actually have his catch stats in front of me, but he did not have a good day. Now, one of those looked like it was a bit out of his control, but someone was tweeting me that, do we have a new candidate for dick fingers? I'm not going that far, but I'm definitely giving him dropopotamus for today. He was dropopotamus all day. Is AJ Brown in his own head? I'm going to throw that to Taylor first.
I wouldn't say it was just an AJ Brown problem, because Julio had some drops too. I mean, there was at least 6 total drops today. That was one of the stats that I saw. I think it has to be in his head, because nothing's changed player-wise. He should still have that chemistry with Tannehill, and he didn't have drops like that last week. But I think Chester Rogers actually did a really good job today. I'd say he was the most reliable out of all of them, because Julio and AJ, I believe, had more drops than Chester Rogers today.
Chester Rogers on the day. one of those things where you saw him kind of playing that safety blanket role for the Tannehill. He did have a lot of chances. Tannehill was looking for him in certain situations. So, but it's one of those things too, like Chester Rogers, Reynolds, he gets a penalty. That's his only appearance for the day. I mean, all those aside, you go out inside Julio Jones, you have AJ Brown, you have a tandem of 1 and 2 that you think is going to be a powerful punch in the NFL. You don't expect for either one of those guys to go through the drop stay that you have. You have 1, maybe 2 for the entire day between the two. That's fine. But to have 4 to 5 out of one guy, I mean, Julio, and he finished his 6 for 128 yards with a long of 51. Julio did his thing today. I mean, of course, it's in Julio fashion, he doesn't score a touchdown, but he had some big catches. He did have one big drop that I can think of. But again, to Taylor's point, you can't have your big guys have those kind of drop days from AJ Brown and contribute, especially when Tannehill, he's not having a bad season. I think that he's had some pinpoint throws. He's come out doing well in this offense, especially in this offense is going to go to Derrick Henry early and often. When you get those chances as a receiver, you can't fumble them away or muff them and drop those passes, because those chances are going to be few and far between. I don't mean that as in that you're not going to get another chance, but I mean that you're not going to be as high volume as you would with like the Atlanta Falcons offense of old, or some of the other, the Arizona Cardinals, those kinds of things. There's just not that many chances. You have to be able to make the impact when you can to give, Downing the comfortability to be able to come back and now granted Julio bounced back today, so that was good for him. So I'm glad to see that, because could you imagine today if Julio Jones was on the same level he was last week and AJ Brown had the drops he had? I mean, it would have been a blowout for Seattle. I mean, the Julio Jones stepping up was a big difference today.
So obviously I'm the DBs guy. And so from Wu Titan Clan off of Periscope, I see thoughts on Chris Jackson playing better than Molden overall. No, we didn't have the full field view. You're 100% correct. We did not have the full field view. Molden is a rookie coming in here, and that is a guy that I think is going to be a stud moving forward. But Chris Jackson is a guy that came in last year against the Denver Broncos in week 1, and everybody was completely down on him because of his performance as a rookie. Molden, on the other hand, and I am guilty of this, I take the L on this. He is a guy that came in, he had the one bad play, and we sit there and try to rectify the reasons that he had the bad play. Chris Jackson is a guy that can perform for a team, whether or not he is a guy that is a true starter in the slot, or he is a guy that is just a special teams performer. Either way, he is a person that you want on this team, and the way he performed in this game should absolutely be recognized. So Chris Jackson, he's kind of the forgotten guy in the secondary with all of the guys that have been out there. Crookshank had some stops on the running backs on the running game against the Seahawks, but they've had some people that have really stepped up, and they're the people that aren't the rookies, the people that it's funny. Yeah, when you talk about how you build a team, they get forgotten about after one season. But Crookshank, Chris Jackson, both of those guys deserve some credit for this win.
Tesla Dog in chat asks, is Chester Rogers a dog name? Now, Tesla Rogers is something I could definitely hear someone yelling at a Labradoodle in Centennial Park. Chester Rogers, you get back over here now. Stop
Chester,
that.
now, Chester.
But in all seriousness, let me go back to coaching, because this is the biggest question mark I take out of this. Beautiful win. I'm so glad they came back to pull it out, because, oh, by the way, your Tennessee Titans are tied for first in the AFC South because the rest of the AFC South took a big dump today. But
hogwash, they should have.
Right. But let me ask this. Do you feel like you're any closer to answering questions about Shane Bowen and Todd Downing at this point? I'll start with you, Born.
I absolutely do. I think this is a team that they've given up some big plays, and they definitely should be held to account for that. The fact that whenever it comes to those times when they're giving up the plays to Tyler Lockett, those should not happen. And those are areas where you can correct. Now, the end of the first half, there's no coming back from it. That's absolutely unacceptable. There is I can't even write that off in any way, shape, or form. That is one of the worst coaching malpractice jobs I have ever seen, to give up points, not just points, but a touchdown in that. And we talked about it in the halftime show, where the only team that had to use a timeout in that situation was the Titans. That's unacceptable in any way, shape, or form. But I do think that the defense has shown some signs of life signs of life. Shines
Shines of life.
Shines of life.
You know what it works.
Sounds like a
Yeah,
daycare.
shown
Honey,
some
get Chester
shines
Rogers in the
of
car. We're going to Shines of Life.
I will just own it.
The
I will
Dance
just own it.
Academy down the street.
Got
Shines of
nothing.
life.
Got nothing to. I'm not going to try and defend myself there. Shines of life. They have shown some shines of life there.
Shines of life aside here, I do like that.
But I will flip it around and also say Bud Dupree, as the guy that they brought in here, has got to show more. And you know, the stats show everything, and I think he has made an impact, but he has not made an impact on the stat sheet. And that man has got to get the quarterback on the ground. That's what he was brought here to do.
Harold Landry was a monster today, and I don't mean that. I mean, he was disruptful. He was in a lot of plays. He finishes with 4 solo tackles, 7 total tackles. He led your Tennessee Titans defensive stat sheet. Harold Landry is freed up. He's more comfortable now. He's not the guy. He's not forced to be the guy through injury or Clowney not playing or whatever else was going on last year. Harold Landry has shown out in these first 2 games. Bud Dupree needs to be able to step up and match that energy as well. But back to the coordinators, just real quick. I was actually happy coming out of the half, 24-9. We said at halftime hits that you had to come out on offense, have balance, go to some spread stuff. I did see a little bit of that. There was some balance in play call. It wasn't run, pass, punt. I know that on those drives, they don't work. It's easy to single out, but there was some definitely mixture in with some intermediate throws, some quick game, everything like that. So you love seeing that kind of stuff out of the offense. And the fact that the offensive line was able to hold up long enough for Henry to have the day he did, but on the defensive side of the ball to come out and be able to adjust a little bit, not repeat that. And again, that's a situation too where we're in those 2-minute drills. It's tough to defend. It's easier on the offense. There's a lot of factors in there, but for the defense to come back out in the second half and not let that get to them, and to be able to call the game that they did and play the game they did in that second half has got to be encouraging going forward. And I'll say this again: this team doesn't fold in situations. Now, the week 1 aside, you get into a close game like this, they're able to claw back in. That's got to be a positive sign for any Titans fans out there watching, to have faith in this coaching staff to be able to keep the players up, keep the players motivated, and the players themselves to stay in the game as well. That's got to be a positive moving forward, regardless of what else happened. And honestly, outside of 3 blown plays to Swaim and 2 to Lockett, and that 1 drive, the defense played winnable football today. I mean, and there's got to be something against Seattle, against Russell Wilson, who is not, maybe he's not considered the elite status, but he's a damn good quarterback in the NFL. And the fact that the Titans were able to keep them in the game and be able to offense then to respawn and score when they needed to has got to be a positive thing going forward as you go into the Colts game next week.
Taylor, the Titans go west and get a win, which is generally really, really hard for East Coast teams to do. They're now coming back home to play at home against the Colts. Based on some of the things we've discussed here, what do you want to see the Titans build upon, specifically against the Colts? The Colts defense looks like they can hold their own a little bit. Their offense is kind of all over the place, but damn it, they continue to have a horseshoe up their ass, as we saw multiple times today with the Colts. What do you want to see the Titans improve on more? I believe you're on mute.
2 big name. We can't have our 2 big name wide receivers dropping all the passes and the 3rd guy making the big plays. There was one drive where Tannehill passed 3 straight plays, and Julio dropped 1, AJ dropped 1, and Rodgers was the one that ended up making the play. We need Julio and AJ to be those go-to guys, because they're the ones with the athleticism that are going to be able to bring down the passes and tight coverage and stuff like that. Chester Rogers, probably not as experienced with that, but we need consistency with the wide receivers, and we need to be better on deep balls, specifically on our defense. There was quite a few deep plays that we gave up today that really hurt us, and they were pretty ugly. It wasn't even close on some of them. We had the Seattle wide receivers just out there, not a defensive player within 10 yards of him. That can't happen. If we're going to make a run for the Super Bowl, like everyone says, and then we can't give up the deep ball, and we can't have drops like that from our top 2 receivers. So that's what I want to improve. Big plays and drops.
All right. Last but not least, we gotta talk about Derrick Henry. You want to talk about someone who single-handedly found a way to just get shit done today. And I was so happy to see that his slow performance ended up turning into him. I got to pull his stats up again. 182 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I'm already blanking on the guy's name, but number 6 for Seattle was so furious when he got burned by Henry rolling to the outside for that touchdown. Just seeing a man that large run the way he does, and watching him run, he doesn't look like he runs that fast, but he's absolutely just burning you. And 6 found that out real quick. But I just could not be more. If I had to pick one person that I just want to send flowers and maybe a bit of an inappropriate note to today, it would be Derrick Henry, because the man just absolutely kept finding a way to get it done. When it wasn't working to the left, he started bouncing to the right. When he was running up the middle and the gap didn't work, he was trying to find another seam, and he just kept digging and damn near got 200 yards. I cannot find the stat, but
35 carries, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, long of 60 yards today was his stat line.
And what was the stat from about when he has a poor game the previous week, just how ridiculous of a game he has the next week? And damn, he lived right up to that. And here we are with us into September. We're not even into D-Hember and No-Hember and all of the fun nicknames we've come up with. This is Derrick Henry getting it done in September. That's your offensive leader right now, and I love it.
But I'll say this about Derrick Henry. He's a guy that I truly believe breaks the mold of the idea that every NFL player is just this spectacular athlete, and they're at the apex of what you look towards when it comes to physical performance. Derrick Henry is that actual guy that actually goes above and beyond what those guys do. And what I mean by that is he is a guy that is built to perform later in the season. And the fact that he's putting up those kind of numbers early in the season, that is something that I actually think will play out when you come to the Titans. And look, it is not something that it's not easy to accept early on, because look, you're looking at something. Oh, well, they barely beat the Seahawks. They lost to the Arizona Cardinals. But when you play this out for a 17-game season, and when you look at a team that wants to win a Super Bowl, the fact that he's putting up 180 yards in week 2, that's a scary thought for a team that's going to have to play this team in week 15, 16, and 17.
Let's not get lost in the fact, too, that outside of 2 blown coverage plays, Ryan Tannehill outplayed Russell Wilson for the entire game. Outstatted him. He was a better quarterback today, in my opinion. I know that Russell Wilson, that's tough to say, but today Ryan Tannehill was the better quarterback. You take away those 2 blown coverage plays, he definitely was not even close. Now, it was close now with those 2 blown coverage plays, and kudos to Russell Wilson for finding them. But, so Ryan Tannehill also gives me some I was hoping that he would rebound after that Arizona game, because we always said what happens when teams can stop Derrick Henry. Now, today, Henry was not exactly effective in the first half, but coming out here in the second half, he definitely was. So that's a testament to the offensive line for finding a way to get it done. Derrick Henry as well, to Lebowski's point, having the gumption just to get things done and to grind things out and make these hard runs. I was just as impressed with the 6-yard runs where he was able to find something which should have been a 1-yard gain. He was able to get 6, 7, 8 yards, as I was just the outside bounces where he was able to get 20, 30 yards. So great response in the second half. And that's got to, as I said earlier, it's got to give you some faith going forward that the Titans can do this early in the season. They can find this kind of rhythm in the second half against what I think is a good NFL football team and be able to find a win on the road. It's not an easy thing to do. Now, looking back, 3-point win on the road, where you could argue the Seahawks probably should have won, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, the Titans were able to come away with a win. It's got to be a great feeling moving forward. But the Titans are on to the Colts next week.
On to the Colts. And you love it. They came out with a win. It's got to make Titans fans feel good. The team found a way to pick up their face off the mat as Bourne just quits. Bourne's done. But the team found...
But then I'm out. Goodbye.
The team found a way to pick up themselves off the mat and get it done. They've obviously still got some kinks to work out, but you got to feel good about the Tennessee Titans coming back home to play the Colts. Again, that is next Sunday at noon, and that is at Nissan Stadium. This is Sunday Night Roundtable. It's very good to have you all back for the season, and it's very good to be able to talk to you on a positive note, because I'm not going to lie. I put in chat before we started the show early on, right at halftime, that I was afraid we were going to have to do this with a drink in my hand and probably a lot of crying and therapy. So we didn't have to do that. We're good. No therapy. She's got a drink, but that's it. Sunday Night Roundtable. We appreciate you all joining us. Always, we are brought to you by Broadway Sports Media. Come check us out, BroadwaySportsMedia.com. And as you see the link on your screen, shop.BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We have some damn good merchandise there. Come check it out. For all of us here, Taylor, Bourne, who just quit, Ryan, and myself, Michael Gillum. It's been fun. You all have a good night.